Hello and welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Nicole, and today it is time for our weekly wrap up. But this week, as promised, it is focusing on a theme. And I guess my theme would be, do I even know what I like? Not really. So I spent the week reading from my list of 24 books in 2024, and you can see the original list and my update on the list and all my thoughts on that list. And now it's time to give me some feedback because I had got through 3 books off that list this week. Well, I'm almost through the third book. And yeah, so that's gonna play into this wrap up. And it does make me really question, like, do I know what I like? Were my 5-star predictions on these books correct? Because pretty much all those books that are on that list, I'm most anticipating reading because I'm expecting to give them a 5 star or at least to really, really, really like them. So let's see how we did. Like usual, I will go ahead and start with the books that I finished. So let me talk about that. So this week I did finish The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins, and I'm just going to say it right off the bat, this was a 5-star read. I absolutely loved this book. I This was a reread for me. I read it in high school and I don't know what was wrong with me because I think at the end of the book I felt like, "Huh? Oh, did this happen?" I think I must have been sleeping when I read this book in high school, and not because it was boring. Like I think I yeah, anyway, it's a whole long story. I loved it this time. I thought it was great. Is it my favorite Wilkie Collins? I don't think so, but I'll have to save that discussion for a whole nother time in video. But for now, I annotated or at least tabbed the crud out of this book. So my tab colors do mean different things. The most important thing to know is that pink and red are moments that I loved, and you won't see a ton of them in here because there weren't a lot of quotes per se that I loved, but there were some really touching moments in this book. There were just some amazing events that happened in this book, and I was concerned because Wilkie Collins writes mysteries, and I was aware of the fact that I was remembered at least some aspect of one of the mysteries, and it's a main one in the book, so I was worried that the reread value would be really low. Nope, it totally wasn't. So I got to one of the main mysteries in the book, and that was revealed, and I did remember quite a bit of it, or at least based on previous reading, was able to anticipate what it was going to be, and that was okay. I could tell it brought, like, a little bit of the joy out of that moment, or awe out of that moment, but other than that, I virtually remembered nothing else that happened in this book, and I was really caught up, and by the time I was in the last 100 pages, this book had me in a chokehold. Like, I was on a reading sprint, and I just put it on mute the entire time because I was like, "I don't have time for you people to chat. I've gotta find out what happens, and I need to finish this book." Anyway, you might be wondering what is this book is about, so how about I tell you that? The Woman in White is about a young man who is in the middle of his career. He's in his early 30s, I believe, and his name is Walter Hartwright. And he is an artist and he is an art teacher. And so he's just spending his time teaching people art. And he's kind of looking for something a little different in life. His life is going well, but it's just kind of, whatever. And he's feeling kind of whatever. And he ends up getting a position out in the countryside outside of London where he lives at the Fairley Estate. And the offer is to teach these two half sisters, just help them with their watercolors. And he is preparing himself to go and do that and hoping the change of scenery will bring some interest in his life. And just before he leaves Paris, he has a very bizarre encounter in the middle of the night with a woman in white, and that's the title of the book's name. And the story goes on from there, and he proceeds to kind of question what really happened during his encounter with this woman. Who is she? Why did he run into her in the middle of the night, which is not something that would be typical during this time period? And what does it all mean? It's just a really great mystery, a great story. There's a nice romance in here. Wilkie Collins, I think, does a really good job of looking at how difficult marriage relationships were. Um, During this time period where women really had no rights, and whatever money and rights they may have had, they would virtually give up by being married. But also, he will sometimes explore how marriage at that time really wasn't that great a thing for men either. And, he explores the characters, the lengths that humans will go to get to what they want, and it's just great. I will say that of all his books that I've read so far, of his major novels, I would say I think this one is the one that I thought was most well written. I felt like he really sort of peaked in his writing style. It was a bit like more wordy in the way that Victorian books can be. I don't know that I would say this is where I would start with Wilkie Collins, but you should definitely get here at some point. So I'm very happy that I reread this, and I'm so happy I put it on my 24 and 24 list. At least this would confirm that, yeah, I do know what I'm going to like, and I should have been anticipating reading this. It was worth my own hype. The next book that I read off my 24 and 24 list, I think I said I was going to try and get to The Mystery of Edwin Drood because then I'd be able to read my book Drood, which is also off this list, which is part of a book project involving this book as well as a couple other books. Yeah, I didn't get to that book. No particular reason. I just happened to, I don't know, that wasn't what I felt like reading next. I actually did go through a point this week where I sat down one day with all the books that I thought I might want to read this week, and I just read like a page or two of them. And actually, what I ended up finding was that I thought The Mystery of Edwin Drood had a very odd start, and at least on that day, was not the book that I felt like picking up. The book that I did end up picking up, however, was The Englishman Who Posted Himself. I was really looking forward to getting to this book. This book is all about a gentleman named Reginald Bray and basically his postage collection, I guess. He is a gentleman during the 1898, so into the 1800s in London. He got a copy of the post office guide and read through it thoroughly and decided that he wanted to put the post office to a test and, in his words, sort of prove that they were very capable and competent and could do their jobs well and efficiently, or something along those lines. Those weren't his exact words. But he wasn't trying to, trick them or make them lives hard, but he did want to, kind of show that, they really could do what they said they could do, which was a lot. There was a lot that they said they could do, including they could mail something as or post something as small as a bee and deliver something as large as an elephant. And one of their biggest requirements was just that it was addressed correctly. So he went and he tested that. This book was full of a lot of fun facts. You got a lot of background information about him. You also had a lot of photographs of things like him posting some onions, not wrapped or packaged, just literally onions with a tag around them saying where they're supposed to go. You saw a lot of the collection of postcards. Which are no longer owned by his family. So whoever put this book together definitely had to work to get images of all of these things because they're owned by multiple different people and organizations and that kind of business. At the end of the day, I ended up giving this book 4 stars. It wasn't a 5-star read for me, and I would say largely because of the writing style. It was very clearly written, but for there to be so many humorous and funny things that were happening just in terms of what he was sending, for some reason, I thought this book would just be way funnier than it was. I thought the writing of this book was very dry. And in that sense, that kind of sucked a bit of the life out of it for me. That said, it was still a really informative read. It was still a really interesting topic. They had a lot of quotes from Reginald Bray's own writings. He published in a lot of magazines and wrote a lot of articles about his sort of work and his study of the postal system, as he considered it. And Reginald himself was clearly a very funny person with a great sense of humor, but I don't feel like that translated as well as it could have in this book. Because really the only humorous things were just what he was sending and doing, but I didn't feel like the writing of this book caught the spirit of that. So that was a little bit of a disappointment, but and it was probably the main thing that kept it from being a 5 for me. I felt like if you were going to write about such a interesting and unique and awesome topic and person and work that they did, that some of that life should be brought into it. But, I'm grateful that this book exists and that I know about this person. So, those are the 2 books that I finished this week. I do have 3 books that I am currently reading, and one of them is also off my 24 and 24 list. And that book is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. And this tells the story of a young woman named Addie LaRue who feels herself being slowly suffocated in her small country French town that she's in, where everybody just grows up, lives, and dies in the same sort of, couple of square miles, though it probably feels like a couple of square feet to her. And she just refuses to live and adapt to that life. And so she reaches the point where, on the eve of her wedding, she just completely rebels against her town, her culture, her family. And she runs off and basically sells her soul to the devil and the promise of immortal life. but she very quickly learns that she has bargained her soul away for way more than she realizes, and then proceeds to live a life where she gets more or less so exactly what she wanted, but with a lot of repercussions, including that no one remembers her until one day someone does. I'm still in the middle of this book and it's going really well. I'm really enjoying it. I have heard a lot of mixed reviews. And I guess the reviews themselves weren't mixed, but all the reviews together on this book I feel like are pretty mixed, where people either really, really like this book or they really didn't like this book. And from what I can tell, it all comes down to the writing style for most people, it seems like. Some people, it seems like, have read other works of V. Schwab, or maybe not, and do not like the writing style in this book. They feel like it's too flowery, too poetic, or whatever. And some people read this book and love the book, and they love the writing style. And as best as I can tell, V. Schwab, I feel like, is more known for her fantasy, and it tends to be like darker fantasy. I have read A Darker Shade of Magic by her, and I do think the writing style in that is very different than you find in this book. I think this book as a whole leans much closer to the literary genre and happens to have some magical realism, I would actually say, in the book. This book to me doesn't overall scream of being a fantasy. I would recommend this book probably to someone who also likes literary fiction. That said, I do think this book has weaker moments where the writing goes a little over the top, and it starts to feel a little forced in terms of its poetical nature and it's trying to do things. At the same time, however, this book has also almost made me cry or at least shed a tear a couple of times. Like, it's a pretty moving story. The themes in here are pretty strong. And that's all I'm going to say about it right now because, like I said, I haven't finished the book. I should say this is not where I am in the book. I am listening to this completely on audiobook. Yeah, I am more like somewhere in this area of the book. So I'm in like the last third of the book or so, and I should finish it in the next day or so. So I'm predicting that this won't be a 5-star read. I think this at most will be a 4-star read for me. It's pretty solidly in that category right now, and it's a high 4-star right now. Like, it's not quite a 5-star for me yet because I've yet to feel like that this is a book that I would truly want to sit down and read and reread and reread, and that's what it would need to be for it to be a 5-star. So I'm thinking this is 4-star land. So, of my 3 24 and 24 books, only one has been a 5-star, but two are 4 stars, or at least this one's likely to be as well. So, I don't think that's that bad. That makes me a bit more excited to get to the other books on that list. I am still in the middle of reading The Arabian Nights, 1001 Nights, and thank goodness you've probably been hearing me for a few weeks complaining about the story that Shahrazad is sharing and how I haven't liked that particular story that she was on. It just wasn't a good story. I was finding it really boring. She has thankfully moved on, and it's now suddenly become like Aesop's Fables, where it's like full of animals and they're telling stories. So, but I don't care. Like, it's moved on from the previous story, which just got really boring. So I'm happy about that. And then I am also starting book 3 in the Mysteries of Paris. This is a buddy read that I am doing, and yeah, I realized that today is May 2nd, and I haven't started reading book 3 yet. So I'm probably going to read 2 chapters of this today to catch up. In the Arabian Nights, I am now doing about 11 pages a day so that I can finish that book by the end of this month. So that's it for me today. That's everything that I've read this week. And let me know what you've read this week and how you're doing. And if you had any reading goals for the year, especially related to books that you're anticipating, and how is that going? Are you finding that you're like, why was I looking forward to this book? It's horrible. Or is it working really well for you? Like, are you good at predicting what you're gonna read and like? Like, I'm feeling like I'm pretty good, except for Heart of Darkness. That was just a mistake. I don't. Yeah. Anyway, I'll talk to you next time. Bye.